In previous videos, we defined and documented the motivations and expectations of stakeholders who want to produce a podcast and prospective consumers who might want to listen to that resulting product. In this segment, we'll consider the motivations and expectations of collaborators who we might want to attract as guests. We'll also run through a few exercises to tie all this data together and produce that winning podcast theme and concept. Now, throughout this series, we'll be referencing course materials that you can download for free at uvus.com/podcasting. It's amazing who will take an interview with you if you have a quality podcast. But really, why wouldn't they? You're investing in amplifying their voice for free. Of course, great relationships don't usually start with a sales pitch. They start by taking a sincere interest in another person. This means that if we want to attract desirable collaborators for our podcast, we'll need to take the time to consider their needs and craft messaging that expresses real personal interest. Let's give that some thought. Why might guests want to contribute to this podcast? Do you suppose it's because they want to promote goods and services to our listeners? This motivation is probably the most common, but of course, no one wants to listen to blatant self-promotion or commercials. Can you think of anything that makes our guest products and services interesting to our listeners? Are there prospective collaborators with products and services that are new and exciting, or that might empower our listeners to reach new goals, or that are controversial or even entertaining? We might determine that our guests are contributing to this podcast because they want to expand their network and their own personal relationships. If this is the case, can we identify what our guests share in common with one another? Where are they currently building these kinds of relationships? Is it by attending events and through public speaking? Are they authors or contributors to publications? Or are they active on social media? If so, do they favor certain platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok? Knowing the answers to these questions will help inform where we want to focus our outbound efforts in the future. It could be that our collaborators are participating on our podcast to shape their personal reputation or brand. If so, how do you suppose they would like our listeners to see them? Could we jot down some adjectives and qualities that might describe our collaborators' aspirational brand? It might be helpful for us to visualize this because our podcast is going to need to complement that persona in order for the opportunity to seem attractive to them. After we've given this some thought, we should have enough to convert our collaborators' motivations into a few job statements. Remember, with jobs to be done, we're trying to define situations, motivations, and expectations. So one job statement might read, when I'm invited to speak on a podcast, I want to share insights so that I can interest others in my work. Challenge the group to come up with as many of these as they can. After we've collected all these situations and motivations and expectations, we really need to figure out how we're going to facilitate them for all three groups. Pull out the job statements we wrote for stakeholders, consumers, and collaborators. If you're utilizing the course materials for this series, you'll see a pull tab at the bottom of the Intersecting Motivations worksheet that correspond to each job statement we wrote. Feel free to cut those tabs and position them on the included Venn diagram in relation to the motivations for the stakeholder, consumer, and collaborator. Do you see any motivations that complement one another? For example, in this workshop, we proposed that the stakeholder wants to promote brand recognition in their industry. The consumer wants to feel a sense of personal privilege, and the collaborator wants to interest others in their work. Challenge the team to use their imagination and bring some of those job statements into the intersection of the diagram. These are the statements that will inspire the most effective podcast themes and show concepts. Now we're ready for the fun part. Can we think of some themes at the intersection of all these motivations? Let's pretend, for example, that our stakeholder is a talent acquisition firm who's already well established in a tech sector, but wants to extend their reach in a manufacturing industry. Since our collaborators want to interest others in their work, could we find potential coaches who lead sought-after workshops in this field? And since our consumers want to feel a sense of personal privilege, could we invite HR managers from corporations in our target market to participate in sample exercises from these workshops in recorded sessions? I'd listen to that. On review, the team may see the potential to build relationships with hiring managers, but the volume might not be there to justify a very high impact score. And after considering all that's involved, we might estimate the production effort to be quite high. This positions our concept in that thankless task category without a great return to justify the cost. we might need to keep ideating. Let's try that again. What if the Iowa Chamber of Commerce wants Iowa to be seen as a tourist destination? Since our collaborators want to interest others in their work, could we invite authors who have books or movies set in Iowa to comment on the settings for their stories? Since our consumers want to feel a sense of personal privilege, could we invite locals to submit questions or comments to the author and give them attribution in the interview? In this case, the Iowa Chamber of Commerce might see a lot of potential for the concept, and production effort seems relatively low. This could be a quick win and a good candidate for further exploration. Before we pull the trigger though, let's consider how much potential content we can realistically produce for this theme. As we think about our own bandwidth, what would we expect the potential cadence be for new episodes? Could we expect daily, weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly releases? Can the group identify a backlog of potential sub-themes and episode subjects? After evaluating the concept everyone's most excited about, the group thinks there are endless topics and sub-themes to explore for the foreseeable future. This may actually be a good candidate for a net new podcast. But what if the team struggles to come up with that list? Let's say in the case of movies set in Iowa, we can only think of Field of Dreams and The Bridges of Madison County, but the author Robert James Waller is already deceased, so that might not work out. We might discover that the theme has real value, but the message is finite in scope. Even though this may not justify launching a whole new podcast, we might consider if there are other established podcasts with related themes that might collaborate with us on this concept as a standalone episode. Could this content be combined with interview video, B-roll, or stock footage and distributed as an evergreen standalone video across existing channels? Not unlike this one. If there's tactical value to this content, is it better suited as a case study, maybe an article or an audiobook that could be distributed behind a paywall, newsletter sign up, or even a publishing syndicate? Either way, by the end of this exercise, your team is going to have a lot more to work with than when we first started. If you've used a process similar to this to come up with some great ideas, we'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And of course, if at any point you'd like a little help from an agency you can trust, we're UVS.